the mindset of both areas is to make things work. Because at the end of the day, it's about the guest experience. And if we're not working together, that is likely to impact negatively on the guest experience, whether they're the people coming to the private events or the visitors that are coming, daytime. But at the end of the day, it's about the guest experience.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Well, I think you know, because I've said it before.
Tell me anyway.
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking.
Good, of course. Yes.
Matt, you ever notice that sometimes, maybe within the attractions industry, maybe even within other industries as well, sometimes there tends to be a little bit of a disconnect between the marketing departments and the operations departments?
I've never noticed that, no.
Never?
Never, but always.
Not even when you had a whole ticket booth full of Coke cans one day when you had no idea what to do with any of them?
Yeah, have I told you that story before?
You did, and you also shared it in this interview.
Yeah, oh yeah, I do that, but yes, that was probably my most memorable time when marketing and communications and operations didn't communicate well with one another. I think both, obviously have the best interest at heart of the operation, but they have very, very different views of how to kind of get there. Marketing is about selling the property and selling the experiences, and then operations has to make it work. And sometimes, and I'm sure you've seen this too, that those things don't connect.
Yeah, well, sometimes they have different goals altogether. Yeah. It's just, get people through the gates by any means possible. And then operations is now, well, what do you do with all these people that are here? So there absolutely needs to be that full alignment. And yes, I do have a number of examples as well. Nothing that resulted in so many soda cans just all over the place. But I mean, I can think of some examples where some businesses have closed where I feel like I could diagnose that as there not being a close enough connection between marketing and operations, because it's about setting the proper expectation for the guest and then being able to deliver and execute on that expectation. So not only is it very important for it to be aligned, but that is a good segue into our guest today, Scott Rose, who is the Chief Operating Officer at ZooTampa, and he does oversee both marketing and operations. So they are fully aligned because they're overseen by an individual, which is really cool to see the advantages that brings to the table, because he has a wealth of experience in both of those normally siloed departments, but now is an opportunity to really bring those together.
And what was cool is, you and I come from the operations background. He actually comes from the marketing side of the business, and to see him embrace and bring together both of those departments, because they do absolutely have to work together, I think is fantastic. Now I want to go back for a second, because you said you can think of some businesses that actually closed because of that. That might be a future episode or something. I want to maybe peel the onion back on that one. But thinking of this conversation with Scott, as I say at the beginning, you and I and Scott know each other and have known each other for a long time because of the Florida Attractions Association. And, I'm really glad that we got to talk to him today, because I learned things about his background that I didn't know, even knowing him for many, many years. Worked for SeaWorld for a long time, opened Discovery Cove in Orlando, worked for SeaWorld corporate for a little bit. So it was really great to catch up and find out those things that I didn't even know.
Yeah, the Discovery Cove piece is interesting. And as you'll see, it piqued both of our interests that we had some specific questions about that because he came on board at Discovery Cove a year before the park opened. So at that point, most people are saying, well, what is this? What is this going to be? And it was definitely a challenge to communicate people what the product is. And the way that Scott describes it, I think, is perfect, is fantastic. And I'm excited for this interview. We talk about aligning marketing and operations. We talk about this transformation that ZooTampa has gone under over the last few years. It used to be the Lowry Park Zoo. Now it's ZooTampa at Lowry Park. We talked about what they did throughout their closure. And we also talk about guest research and all the things that I nerd out about all the time of collecting guest feedback and using that towards making continual improvements within your operation.
Well, I think with that intro, let's go ahead and get to Scott's interview. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Scott Rose, thank you so much for joining us today on the Attraction Pros podcast. How you doing, Scott?
Doing great. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So excited to talk to you today. You know, you and Josh and I go back a ways, you know, with Florida Attractions Association. So it's about time we've had you on here. But Scott, can you give us so long? You're a hard get. That's what it is. Can you just kind of give us a quick rundown of kind of your history in the industry and with zoos, aquariums, and all the things you've done?
Sure, love to. I've really had the opportunity to work in this industry my entire career, and it's been a pretty long career at that. Yeah, you know, the good thing is it's not just been working in attractions, it's been working in animal attractions my whole career. I started back in 1980 at SeaWorld San Diego. Fresh out of college, I found a job there as a group sales representative and didn't know much about it, but I thought, hey, it's a pretty cool place to work. And joined the team there and was selling group events and putting ticketing programs together and group promotions and such, and thought I'd be there for a couple of years and then move on to a real job. Well, you know, a few years later, I was still there. And in fact, I worked at SeaWorld San Diego in a variety of sales and marketing positions for 19 years. At that point, I had the opportunity to transfer to SeaWorld Orlando, specifically to open up the new Discovery Cove Park, which is SeaWorld's Dolphin Interaction Park across the street. And that was an amazing experience, I'll tell you, because at that point in time, that concept for a high-end, limited capacity, all-inclusive, you know, high ticket price attraction park had never been done before. And quite honestly, we didn't know if it was going to work or not, but we loved the concept, and I was on board about a year before the park was open and helped put together all the marketing plans, sales channels, sales distribution network, reservation center, and then opened the park on July 1st, year 2000. And sure enough, the park worked right from the get-go. It was extremely successful. People loved the concept, particularly the international market. The UK visitors to Orlando represented about half of the park on any given day. So it was just, and it's a great experience. If you haven't done it, you really need to go and experience Discovery Cove. So I was there for a couple more years after the park opened, and then moved on to the SeaWorld corporate side and did some work for all of the Busch Entertainment Corporation parks at the time. There were 11, and Busch Gardens Williamsburg and SeaWorld Texas, California, et cetera, and helping put together marketing plans, research programs, pricing strategies, open new attractions and such. So gave me a good variety of things to experience there. After 30 years, I left SeaWorld and moved over to Tampa to join forces with my good friend, the late Tom Stork, who was CEO of the Florida Aquarium. And so made the move from a big corporate theme park group to a relatively small nonprofit organization at the Florida Aquarium. And we did some great things there. I was there heading up sales and marketing, and then Chief Operating Officer for about 7 years, and then decided to go out on my own. I was going to, start my own business as a consulting with attractions, helping with marketing projects and research development. And one of my first clients was ZooTampa. And, I started here and working on some projects. And about a year later, they asked if I could join the team as Chief Marketing Officer. And so I did so. And then about a year after that, took on the operating groups, non-animal operating groups here. And so that's where I am today. This is a great business to be in, I'll tell you. I couldn't think of any other industry I'd want to spend my career in than the attractions business. It's a place where there are parks where people want to go, and we help make memories and provide fun and exciting times for families and for our visitors. And on the animal side of it, the great things that these parks do for animals and wildlife, saving and protecting and rescuing, rehabilitating animals is just amazing. And so, at the end of the day, it's very rewarding. You're making people happy and you're saving animals. Couldn't be better.
Yeah. Scott, if you don't mind, I have a question about Discovery Cove, if that's okay. When you were there, you said you came on board about a year before the park opened and putting together the marketing and the communication for that. Curious if it was challenging to actually explain to people what it was, because it was such a unique concept. Obviously, it's been open for 20 years now. It's been very successful. People, for the most part, probably pretty much understand what it is. But I can imagine back then, were people saying, "Is this a theme park? Is this a water park? It looks a lot smaller. Is it worth it?" That there was the element of not knowing what it is, and curious if and I can imagine that had to have been somewhat of an exciting challenge to be able to put together that communication for it.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It was a challenge. There was no playbook for this because nobody had done it before, and so to try and explain it to people, this high-end resort, people thought that we had a hotel there because we positioned it as a resort. We didn't have a hotel there, but it was a resort type of experience, and we tried to kind of explain it as it's the Ritz-Carlton of theme parks, if you will. And you come in and we'll totally immerse you in a different environment. Everything's included, and it just is a day that you'll never forget. Hard to explain not only to consumers but also to clients, to the sales clients, ticket sellers, and tour operators, because they didn't understand it, and particularly the limited capacity part of it. We could only allocate a certain amount of our inventory to sales channels, and when they sold those and they were gone, then they just wanted more, and they didn't understand the whole idea of this limited capacity and limited availability of our inventory. So it took a while to get the park known and the new concept known, but we worked hard at that, and by the time we got it open, I think people were really totally understanding of what the new concept was.
Scott, I've got another Discovery Cove question. Maybe more about why aren't there more? Not just Discovery Cove, but why aren't there more high-end, limited capacity, all-inclusive attractions, not just resorts, but attractions as well, where there are things to do? Maybe there are animal encounters, but why aren't there more of those? More of that model?
Excellent question, Matt. There are other dolphin interaction parks around the world, quite honestly, a lot of them. But they're not to the same magnitude of Discovery Cove, and they're not all a full day experience in a resort theme park, if you will. It's a special model, and it's hard to replicate. We looked at really around the world at other locations where we could build another Discovery Cove. Las Vegas, Hawaii, overseas, and we couldn't find the right combination of, you need a large tourist base that's going in there, you need the right climate, and Orlando has kind of that both aspects of the huge tourist base that they have and a year-round climate where you could have an outdoor experience like that. It's a good question, though. I think that there are opportunities for other high-end attractions to be built and could be successful. But that's just, it hasn't really been replicated.
Yeah. No, I think that's Matt. I think you bring up a really interesting point. Definitely something to think about. To say if you're able to create something that commands a lot of exclusivity, then it builds demand that exceeds the supply. And you have the travel agents that are saying, "I'm all out of my inventory," and running into that very good problem and setting up the business that way. So yeah, maybe we'll see more of these coming into the future. Now that Discovery Cove for the last 20 plus years has definitely proven the business model, proven the case for it. So let's shift a little towards ZooTampa. Tell us a little bit about what you're focusing on there and what your role is with the zoo.
Okay. Well, my role here as Chief Operating Officer is I oversee the non-animal operating departments, including guest services, security, park quality, health, the medic department, and also the guest experience department, retail. I also oversee the sales and marketing, as well as maintenance and construction. So it's a large area of the zoo. I've got a great leadership team that I work with that are capable of managing all of those departments. I just kind of try and provide them with a little bit of direction. So, we're focusing on growth right now. We rebranded about 3 years ago. We were Lowry Park Zoo, as you may recall, and we rebranded to ZooTampa at Lowry Park. One of the key reasons is because we felt that Lowry Park Zoo made us feel small, made us feel like a neighborhood zoo, and we were bigger than that. And ZooTampa, we feel, is much more aligned with this the region here, and it really catapulted us forward, and the brand has grown significantly and strengthened considerably since then. We have spent a lot of time improving the park, the quality of the park. It's an older facility. Goes back 30 years, and it's an aging facility. So we've invested into the infrastructure. We've invested into new experiences here. We have recently completed a 5-year strategic plan and a 20-year master plan that will take us into the future. Exciting stuff, I'll tell you. This zoo here has a bright future. We have grown significantly in the last couple of years from an attendance and revenue standpoint. We had some challenges going through COVID, as everybody did, but we came out stronger than we went into it. And we've had, our business is stronger than it ever has been, I'm pleased to say. The team has worked very hard to get us there too. It didn't just happen, but we are now positioned to move forward. We have a $21 million campaign to raise the funds for our master plan. And so we've embarked upon that. We've got a new attraction that'll be opening up next spring called Florida Wilds, which is a renovation of our Florida Panther and bear facilities to expand what we do there and allow us to do more conservation work with Florida wildlife. Our Manatee rescue and rehab program is incredibly important to helping the plight of the manatees, which I'm sure you know has been particularly challenged this year. We have one of the only critical care centers for manatees here in Florida, and we rescue manatees, bring them in, rehabilitate them, and then hopefully release them back into the wild. And if they're not deemed releasable, we'll move them to another facility that can care for them. Because we're a hospital here, we don't keep the manatees here for an extended period of time. So the team that handles our conservation and research is stellar, and the work that they do is simply amazing. Our mission is to save wildlife, particularly Florida wildlife. So that's really what we focus on here at ZooTampa.
So you're really not busy at all.
I've got a great team that does all the
That's awesome. Scott, I'm curious, you talked a little bit about the conservation piece and the rehab and the rehabilitation of the animals. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think sometimes, you know, people get a view of the zoo where they go in and they look at the animals, but they don't know all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that is really about, like you said, conserving and preserving wildlife, rehabilitating animals. So can you talk a little bit more about what ZooTampa does there?
Sure. You know, our focus, as I said before, is on conservation programs primarily on Florida wildlife and manatees, panthers, black bears, indigo snakes, and such. And you know, we work with an alliance of other zoos in some cases. We work with Florida Fish and Wildlife, who manage a lot of the conservation programs. And then we tell the story. We tell the story to our visitors here through interpretive graphics, videos, and such that they can experience when they visit the zoo. And we feel it's important to tell that story because the challenges that these animals have, many of which are endangered, are because of the interface that they have with humans. And you know, whether it's habitat destruction of some sort, or pollution in the water, or boat strikes with manatees, which is a big challenge there. And we try and through these stories change behavior so that they can understand that what they do it can impact wildlife that's right here in our own backyard. And so that's our, again, that's our mission, is to inform, educate, inspire people to learn to cohabitate with animals in nature.
So Scott, being that you oversee marketing and operations and anything that is a non-animal related department, how important is it for you to bring, you know, the background that you have of 40 plus years working with animal related attractions and just having the passion for the animal care and conservation, or, you know, could someone be in this role who has a lot of marketing and a lot of, you know, operations, you know, focus in maybe a business that did not deal specifically with animals, but everything else is, you know, all things being equal? Or does it require this same level of passion running through your veins?
You know, I don't think it requires it, but I think it's a plus, because that's what gets me up every morning and brings me to work, is that passion. And you know, I think I can have good relationships with the animal folks because I do have a background that had been around animals, animal trainers, animal care staff, animal vets, my entire career. I'm not one myself. I don't, you know, promise to be one, but nevertheless, I think I can understand what they do and have a great appreciation for that. So it's not required, and you know, people can come in from different backgrounds and do the job, marketing or operations. But I think the experience that you know, I've had in my career and others in similar positions, where you've been around these type of attractions with animals, can make a difference.
Yeah. Scott, a minute ago, you talked a little bit about COVID, and I'm wondering if we can go back there because, you know, we're still at the time of this recording, still dealing with some of the COVID issues. And I know that you've got a great story about kind of the things that have happened at the zoo. Can you kind of walk us through some of the things you did at the zoo to kind of make it through the pandemic?
Sure. You know, as we in the attractions industry, we all went through this together, and there was no playbook for this. And so we, as a leadership team here, worked very, very hard collaboratively to make the right decisions to get this organization through this challenging period. And like you said, we're still going through it and dealing with some of it. But you know, when it became reality that we were going to close down mid-March of last year, We made the decision to furlough 80% of our staff here. The other 20% were retained predominantly to take care of the park, but more so to take care of the animals. You know, we couldn't just lock the doors and go home. We had a lot of animals that relied on us to take care of them and to feed them and to provide their welfare. So that's what we did, but we worked through it with the intention of coming out of this stronger than when we went into it. And we fully intended to bring back every one of those employees that we furloughed, and we did. And we were closed for 2.5 months. We opened up the end of May. And we brought back every one of those employees that wanted to come back. There were a couple that, you know, wanted to go do something different or were concerned about coming back in the state of the health then. I think one of the keys for our success through this whole program is that we continued to market the park. We continued to market the park through the time that we were closed. Our reopening, we didn't take our foot off of the accelerator by any means. In fact, we invested more into it because we knew people would come back eventually. And so in some cases, we saw attractions and other organizations that said, let's stop everything right now. You know, we'll come back when we can. But we took a little different approach to it. And when we were closed, we had an advertising campaign out there. We had to obviously adjust the communications in it. We had to be respectful of the time. But we were letting people know that, you know, as they were taking care of their family, we were taking care of our family. And we used social media to a great extent. We did have you know, some other advertising and media opportunities that told our story. And, you know, then when we got ready to open, we were welcoming people back and really reinforcing that we were doing everything possible to keep this experience safe. And we had a campaign, Get Wild Safely, to where, you know, we were promoting that the nature of the zoo is an outdoor experience. It's wide open. We've got safety protocols, and we had all of the safety protocols of limited attendance and taking, you know, temperatures of our guests coming in, and masks, and you know, cleanliness standards, and all of that, as everybody did. And so our business rebounded pretty quickly. I'm proud and pleased to say. And like I said before, we now, a year plus later, have had, you know, the most successful year in our history.
Wow.
It's been challenging, and I know I will say that we were fortunate to be an outdoor facility. Indoor facilities had more of a challenge by nature of that, but we kept things going, and it worked.
What were some of those things that you did while you were marketing, while you were still closed, that led to the successful rebound that happened after that?
Well, like I said, we continued with our campaign out there. We adjusted it for the time, the communications. We used social media to keep our awareness up. We knew that since people couldn't come to the zoo, we needed to take the zoo to them. And so a lot of those social media efforts were designed to educate and to entertain, and to be kind of the virtual zoo, if you will, and to show what we were doing, taking care of our animals when the zoo was closed. There's a lot of interest in how this all impacted the animals. A lot of questions being, you know, how are the animals dealing with this? Do you notice any difference because there's no visitors around? And so we talked a lot about that, and the answer is yes. You know, the animals noticed that, hey, something has changed here. You know, we don't have a lot of folks wandering around the park here. They're still being taken care of, but they knew something was different. And when we reopened, you could tell that there was a real energy there with the animals. So we really did a lot to be top of mind, that we're looking forward to having you back. The animals miss you. and they're looking forward to it. And so I think then when we reopened, we were teed up and ready to welcome people back.
Scott, one of the things I'm curious about really has to do with your background in marketing and sales and, kind of looking at everything from that lens and now being responsible for the operation of the entire facility. So how does that experience inform your current decisions versus maybe somebody that came from operations or finance? Like, do you see yourself making different decisions or having a different lens than people that come from a different background?
Sometimes I find that I'm arguing with myself. And I say that because, in sales and marketing sometimes don't always get along very well with the operations folks. So, now that I'm overseeing both, I have to mitigate, some of those differing opinions or, priorities that are different there. And so it's fun, in my opinion. And I think that, with a single leader over sales and marketing and operations, it kind of can bring those teams together in a positive way. What sales and marketing does a lot of times, well, what they do, it impacts the operations areas. And so we spend a lot of time figuring out how to deal with that and how to work well together and communicate well to ensure that operations knows what marketing's doing and vice versa.
Yeah. You mentioned that it can be a challenge because sometimes sales and marketing don't always agree with operations. Can you expand on that a little bit, or maybe shed a little light of sometimes what some disconnects could be or certain scenarios?
Well, let's take private events for an example. We sell, we have a team that goes out and sells big parties at the park. And, salespeople are always anxious to sell whatever they can, right? And then operations is in a position where they have to deliver on it. And so there are times, and I've been on both sides of the table, where we've been out selling events that were very difficult to deliver on. And so, those are the type of issues that need to be dealt with in the appropriate way. And it's all about communications. You just, if you properly communicate, you plan in advance, and the mindset of both areas is to make things work. Because at the end of the day, it's about the guest experience. And if we're not working together, that is likely to impact negatively on the guest experience, whether they're the people coming to the private events or the visitors that are coming, daytime. But, at the end of the day, it's about the guest experience.
Josh, I'm glad you asked that question because that was going to be my follow-up question. and if I might, one of my favorite sort of operations marketing stories is when I was working at a park and they started to do a promotion where if you bring a can of a certain soda that you get, admission, a certain amount of the admission off. Well, that was never communicated to the front gate folks. And first of all, they had no button on their POS system for the discount. And then second of all, we had no place to put all the cans that people brought in. So it was really a great lesson in communication, or what could have been done a little bit better from a communication standpoint. But Scott, I want you to talk a little bit, if you could, about the guest experience at the zoo and maybe how it's changed over the years. And speaking of your 5-year and your 20-year strategic plan, where do you see that going in the future?
So, the guest experience has changed through the years and will continue to evolve. I think what we try to do here is look for ways to engage our visitors and immerse our visitors into the zoo with the animals. And we have developed signature encounters that allow our guests to go behind the scenes and learn about the elephants, or feed Indian rhinos, or go into the South African penguin habitat and And then we have our animal care staff that comes out and talks to visitors with animal, ambassador animals, sloths and snakes and other porcupines and tamanduas and other animals. And, you know, it not only is engaging the guests directly with the animals, but it's educating them. It's an opportunity to have a conversation about not only the animal, but what we do to care for the animal and the enrichment. And then if it's an endangered species, the challenges that these animals have. And so our guest experience, we understand, quite honestly, that those visitors that have up close engagements with animals, their overall satisfaction levels are much higher than those that don't. We don't want to be a zoo where people just walk around and look at our animals in their habitats. We don't. We want them to get involved. And, you know, we've broadened the experience. We have some rides here now. We have some a couple of shows. And so it's more than just a, you know, old style zoo. We use our in-park research extensively to improve the guest experience. And what I mean by that is we conduct research with visitors. We use a company called Moray Research. They do a lot of zoos and aquariums across the country. I've used them here at the zoo for several years and at the aquarium. And what that research does is it gives us a total picture of the guest experience, from their overall satisfaction ratings to how they felt about the cleanliness of the park and employee courtesy, and educational value, entertainment value, the people that had inconveniences in the park and how we deal with those. And the great thing about this research is it benchmarks against other zoos and aquariums. So, you know, if a rating is like, say, 80% overall satisfaction, well, is that good or is that bad? Without benchmarks, you don't know. So this gives us an idea of how we rate relative to our peers and other attractions that are similar in nature. And, you know, we use that. We use secret shopper reports, and that kind of gives us a glimpse into how our employees are doing, and rated by the secret shoppers that come in. We have a program here called Host of the Day, which is where a management person is assigned we have one person every Saturday to spend the day in the park with their family, not in uniform, not with a name tag on, not with a radio, just experience it like a guest would, and then write a report. And then we review the report. We have here a team called the Guest Experience Team that represents key departments around the zoo. And we meet weekly, and our focus is the guest experience. And we use these tools to really analyze it and drill down into the data and look at how certain ratings are driving other ratings. Like I said before, we know that those guests that have an experience, encounter with an animal of some way, shape, or form, their overall satisfaction is scored much higher. And so we look at all of those cases of inconveniences and go through every single one of them. And how can we fix that? How can we do better? And then look at what's working and build upon it. Then we use this research and these ratings in performance evaluations, and they determine people's bonuses, quite honestly, all the way from the CEO to the frontline staff. And we have to hit certain guest experience ratings in order to succeed from a bonus standpoint. So it's the most important thing, you know, in my opinion, and because I kind of drive that whole area, why we're here, and to engage with the visitors and to provide a really, really good experience.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. I'm definitely a huge nerd for guest experience research and data. So I was loving every second of that response there and hearing all that you do, because it's so much, and it's really wanting to make sure that you get into every single granular detail of the guest experience and look at it from multiple different angles, from the secret shop reports to the research that you do with Moray to the host of the day program, and looking all that from as many angles as possible to make sure that you have the full picture. Can you talk about what then happens with that data once you know what all the answers are, to be able to take that and convert that into actionable solutions or long-term implementations that then result in ideally higher satisfaction scores and continual enhancement of the guest experience that's based off of the data to say, here's a concern that we're getting, in large waves. So it's definitely an aggregate, and being able to say, well, let's come up with that long-term solution for that issue, and then implementing that, putting it in place.
Well, that's exactly what this guest experience team is tasked with, is to drill down into the research, learn about it, learn what's working, what's not working, then put actionable plans together to address it, to improve. And I'll give you an example. One of our biggest, what we call inconveniences here at the zoo is closed attractions or closed facilities. And it comes up all the time. It's the number one category of inconveniences, whether it's a closed habitat or a closed concession stand or a retail shop or a ride. And so what we are doing right now is we are, as a team, going in and putting a plan together. We're identifying every facility that's closed, what the operating hours are, and reasons why they're closed. Is the ride broken down, for example? Is the animal off habitat because it's in medical treatment? And looking at each and every one of those to see if we can improve upon it. It's really tough because, this park on a day like today will do maybe 1,200 people. On a busy day in springtime, it'll do 7,000 people. Well, it's hard to keep every single facility open that's designed to accommodate a 7,000 person day for 1,200 people. It doesn't always make financial sense. It's not necessarily the best business decision, but understanding that it drives the guest experience, sometimes we have to balance the financial side of it with the guest experience side of it. And we may invest in keeping facilities open for a low attendance day that otherwise it probably wouldn't make sense, but we do it because of the guest experience, because we don't want people walking out of here thinking, there's sure a lot of stuff closed and I didn't get my money's worth, because the people that come in on a day like today, they should have the same experience as somebody that comes in on a 7,000 person day. So, that's an example of how this team works together and tries to break it down into manageable pieces that work a plan that eventually will improve and address the situation at hand. So hopefully that's a good example.
Scott, I want to go back to that host of the day program just for a second, because I love the idea of not only coming in, no name tag, no radio, but also bringing your family on a Saturday. Because I think when you bring your family or you're there with your friends, you have a much different perspective of kind of the experience that people are having. So are there any lessons or learnings or insights that you can share that you've gotten from that program that maybe you wouldn't have gotten from any of your other data sources?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We used to do the program just with the senior leadership staff, and we designed it to get input from senior leadership as to their experience in the park. We've expanded it a lot now to the other levels of management so that we can get insight from people who normally don't comment on the guest experience. And we get incredible feedback bringing families is so important because if you've got, particularly if you have small kids, you see the experience through their eyes. And that's important because that's the way our visitors experience the zoo, right? So we want to see it from their perspective. We invite them to do signature encounters when they're here for the day. We, provide them with breakfast certificates and lunch certificates so that they can tell us about the food, what's good, and they develop a report, and then they come to our guest experience team meeting every week and talk to us about their experience and talk to us about how their guests responded. They talk about what they think we need to improve upon, and they see things that we as senior leaders who walk the park every day don't see. It's amazing the type of insight that you can get from the employees. And so we encourage it. We actually require it, but it's good for them. And, because especially sometimes administrative folks don't always get out into the park. I know. And I spend a lot of time out in the park now because I've got an operations hat to wear. But when I was strictly marketing, there'd be a week go by that I didn't get out into the park, And so it's good for them to see the park and see it, experience everything and see it with their families in a very casual environment.
Yeah.
You mentioned the feedback that comes in from the kids, from the families, of the host of the day. Do you find that tends to be, I would say, a little more candid and therefore could actually be even better quality feedback than perhaps, from an adult or from a guest who might, stop and leave a comment card or something like that? And how does that, I would say, weave its way into the overall research process and understanding it?
Yeah. Yeah, you do. You get very candid feedback from kids. I wish we could bring those kids to our meeting, our guest experience team meeting, and hear it directly from them because that input is filtered through their parent or through our employee here. But I wish we could, and I spend a lot of time out in the park, and I'll stop and I'll talk to kids, because I want to hear it from them. I want to see what, hey, what are you enjoying your day? What's your favorite animal? And they'll tell you, and you get some great insight from that.
So Scott, I just have to ask you, what's your favorite animal?
And is it land or sea? Spent so much time working with both.
I know.
Yeah, I love them all. And, it was great working in an aquarium with aquatic animals for the length of time that I did. I love being in a terrestrial animal zoo. I would say my favorite animal here at the zoo is the orang. They're just so much fun to watch. They're so personable. We've got a family of orangs here that boy, I'll tell you, I could spend all day out there. And, that's one of many favorite animals that I have. The Florida Panther, I'm so amazed with the Florida Panther and the plight that they have. There's only a couple of hundred left. And, the population is dwindling. We're helping to try and prevent, the challenges that they have with they're hit by cars a lot. They're, some of the ranch owners hunt them for, really bad reasons. And so, we've got to protect that species or it'll be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Scott, going back to, I would say, SeaWorld San Diego in the early 1980s, when you said that you were only planning to be there for a short amount of time and then go get a real job. And then your career path obviously kept you in the industry with some very much real jobs within the business, within the animal theme park business and in the zoos and aquariums. If you weren't in this industry, what do you think you would be doing instead?
I don't know. I honestly, I've never thought about doing something different. So I couldn't tell you what I'd be doing. You know, this business gets into your blood, and it quickly got into my blood at SeaWorld San Diego. You know, I loved, back then, SeaWorld was quite different. It was much smaller and much more of a family environment. You know, that was 40 years ago, right? And it just became a part of my life. And I met my wife there. She was a tour guide at the time. And, you know, our kids were basically raised there. They knew all the trainers. They, you know, had birthday parties there, sleepovers, summer camps. It just becomes part of your life. So you know, Josh, I couldn't tell you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, I had one more question kind of going back to that time, though. Thinking about some of those maybe early lessons that you learned working back there at SeaWorld in San Diego, and now being, again, the COO of the zoo, what sort of lessons do you take from some of those early experiences and still use today?
Well, learning the business in a broad way, you know, not just learn sales, not just learn marketing. Learn about the finances of the business, learn about the operations of the business, learn about the educational components of the business, so that you become much broader, you have a much broader knowledge of how the business works. And I think you provide more value to the company in that respect. Additionally, I've always been an advocate of being involved in the industry. And from day one in San Diego 40 years ago, I was involved in the industry, American Marketing Association, sales organizations, with the Visit San Diego Convention and Visitors Bureau and such. I think that being active in the industry will help folks in terms of their professional development. They will better represent their organization within the industry, and the networking, the educational opportunities. As you know, here I'm involved with Florida Attractions Association, which I've been part of for many, many years, served on the board for about 7 years and chair for a couple of years. Great organization, family organization. The annual conference, the networking events that they have is just a great opportunity for anybody in the attractions industry and those that work with the attractions industry. So I'm a big advocate of it. I really try to encourage and in some cases insist my staff be involved in industry organizations, and not just being a member of it, but participating in it. Get on a committee, you know, get onto the board and have a seat at the table, because then you have a voice at the table. Your organization has a voice at the table. You know, I'm part of Visit Florida board as well. And I want to be, because I want to be part of how the organization markets this state, because the tourism is so important to the business that we're all in. So, you know, those are a couple of things that I think are really, really important.
Great.
Yeah, really well said. Thank you for sharing those insights, those lessons. Scott, this has been just such a great conversation. We really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today. If people want to get a hold of you, or if they want to learn more about ZooTampa, where would you send them?
Well, I can certainly take any emails that somebody wants to send me. It's scott.rose@zootampa.org. You can learn an awful lot about the zoo on our website, zootampa.org. And, you know, I'm happy to talk with anybody out there about the zoo. That's what I do. I love talking about the zoo and what we do. So.
And Scott, we have loved this conversation talking about the zoo and your career and everything that you've been doing. So thank you again for your time today. And for everybody out there watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros. Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release. And even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit attractionpros.com.